like, I'm so excited that I even made myself a latte.
Go for it. All right, recording.
Let's,
Good.
let's do it. So thank you guys for being here this morning. And I'm even really excited and surprised that there's more than one person on here. Because there's not a lot. Journaling is perceived as something that people want to do, but they just can't for whatever reason. They don't know what to write. They're intimidated by a sheet of paper. They don't know if their handwriting has to be pretty. They don't know if they can cuss or if they can be sad or I mean, they're just they just don't know. So they get frozen and they say, oh, I can't do it. And it's really not that big of a deal anyway. But I'm going to share with you why it is a big deal and why it really is something that you should mix into what you do every day. So those of you that were in Ignite, you may have already heard this, but I'm going to say it anyway, because I'm a storyteller, so that's how I do things. But so I have a beautiful 14-year-old that was named after her grandmother, and her name was Abigail. And she and I were always very, very, very close. We lived on the same farm where my dad grew up, and so she was close in proximity, and we were just close in general. And the night Abby was born was at 9:46 on Columbus Day. I called her. We did not find out what we were having with either kiddo. So I called her and I said, got to know that the girl, and we named her Abigail after you. And she, of course, cried and said, oh my gosh, I cannot wait to meet my namesake. This is amazing. I just, and so that night, I'm in the hospital. That night, she dies in her sleep. And my brother showed up the next day. He was supposed to bring her with, and he walks in and he's by himself. And I knew in my heart what had happened. I knew that she had passed away. And so here I am, supposed to be celebrating this amazing birth of my first child, and at the same time I am mourning the loss of my grandmother, and more than that. She was more than that to me. So instead of going home from the hospital, I go straight to her funeral with my newborn, and it was one of the most difficult times in my life. And she did not have much. She grew up, we grew up on a farm. She grew up on a farm. She had a third grade education. She was very Southern, very kind, very proper. Just didn't have much. So when I got ready to leave, my aunt, who is my dad's oldest sister, my dad had already passed away at this point, said, she didn't have much, but I want you to go in her room with me, and I want you to pick something out of her jewelry box. So I go in and I'm looking through her things, and I'm just not, like, I never saw her wear a piece of jewelry. Only a gold wedding band is all I ever saw her wear. And I was like, I'm not feeling that. I can't, it just doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't remind me of her. It's okay. You know what? I'll just take what I have. But I made her a bookmark when I was in second grade. And she always kept it in her Bible. And I was like, I would like to have that bookmark because I know that's in her Bible. And she said, okay. So I went over to the Bible and lifted up the Bible. And underneath it was a green spiral notebook with a 65-cent orange sticker on it. And I'm like, what is this? What is in this notebook? So I open it up, and it is her journal. as cryptic and as misspelled and is, but guys, that was her soul on that paper. Her first entry in that journal, I have the hardest time getting through this, but you'll understand. The first entry in that journal was the day that my dad died. The last entry in that journal was about my daughter. And so that is what I chose to take. And that is what I have today. And as you can imagine, that was worth more than any piece of jewelry that I could ever have in my life. So I decided from that point on, I had always been a journaler. I wrote things down when I felt like it or I had time or, was feeling Hemingway-ish or whatever. But I decided from that day on that legacy that she left me was the best thing she could have ever left me, right? It was worth more than anything in the world that she could have done. So from that day on, I decided, you know what? I'm going to journal. I'm going to journal every day. And that is going to be my legacy that I leave, right? I want somebody to pick up that journal one day when I am gone that says, you know what? I would have loved her. I would have loved sitting down and talking to her and picking her brain and listening to her stories. Like, that is what I want to leave, because that's really all we have is who we are. So when people say to me, when I'm talking to them about their why or coaching them through their why, and they say, oh, I want to leave a legacy. If it's not written down, unless you or have a library named after you or something, how do you leave it, right? How do you do something? And maybe you will have a library named after you and they'll keep your journals in it. I don't know. But so I started doing some pretty big research on journaling. And this is what I can tell you. The most knowledgeable, successful, wealthy people in the world are journalers. Period. That is what they have in common. They are all so incredibly different, but that is one thing that they have in common. So Jim Rohn, I don't know if you guys know who Jim Rohn is, but if you don't, I would suggest that you look him up and read and listen to some of his work, because he is amazing. But he always said, don't trust your memory, write it down, because you will never remember, right? So how many of us are moms or dads and we go through and we're like, oh, I'll always remember that they said X, right? And we don't remember that. So one of my favorite things is going back and being like, oh my God, I completely forgot that they said this on this day. Like, those are things that I can't recall, but if I go back and look and read my journal, it's definitely in there. So I am going to share my screen. Okay, so on this, you'll just be able to see the screen and not me, yeah? You're on mute.
It kind of shrinks it and moves you over.
It does? Okay, all right. So
make sure you click the button on the bottom that says audio of your computer. Do you see a little checkbox when it says screen share? So we can still hear you. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. So this is what Jim Rohn says. So he says, become a good storyteller. To be a good storyteller, you've got to collect your stories. So if you come across something valuable, write it down. If you come across something important, write it down. And he said the best books that you can buy are the empty ones, and then they become the most valuable. So everybody's always like, okay, right, I know you're telling me this. Who really kept journals? Let me show you this. So this is Mark Twain's. This is one of his journals. Now, his journals are in the Smithsonian. They're actually called the Mark Twain Journals. And I wrote this down because I thought it was awesome. So he wrote a book called The Innocents Abroad. And that book, believe it or not, was more of a bestseller than Huckleberry Finn, than any of the Tom Sawyer books. So about his travels through Europe. And this is what he says. Among many observations, one that resonates with me is the difficulty of keeping a journal. So he recognized that it was. But during a single-month voyage from San Francisco to New York, he filled an entire notebook with his thoughts and observations. And that is the 7th of 49 surviving notebooks. Okay? So that's his notebook, which I just think is brilliant. And I have tried to zoom in and look in it. I can't do it, but I just think it's so cool. So this one is Lewis and Clark. They had, if you can see, this is their journey notebook. So you can see how they took their journeys. And they had, theirs are in the Smithsonian. So they had 18 small notebooks, and they would put them, you can see this one is wet, but they tried to put them in a tin to keep them dry so that they could pass them on, which I just think is so cool. All right, and here is my favorite one, probably because she's a woman and she was so cool. So this was Marie Curie's notebook. And if you guys remember who she is the mother of modern physics. She died from aplastic anemia, which is a rare condition linked to high levels of exposure to radioactive elements. So her notebook, she carried it in her pocket, is so radioactive that it is under glass in a library in Paris, and you have to sign a waiver to even see it. That's how radioactive it is, which to me is so cool because that never left her side. And look, I mean, just, she's a badass. I mean, look at all of her sketches. And so she passed that along. I mean, those are her notes. That's her handwriting. That was it's just awesome to me. Okay, this is Leonardo Da Vinci. I think that is also amazing, just to see his sketches and what he was thinking. And here's the thing, probably a lot of this did not work, right? That's the cool thing about it. But people have been known, architects, engineers have been known to go back into his journals, take his original thoughts with what we have today, and make these ideas work. So if he had not put them on paper, we would not have those ideas, right? So, all right, so this is where you're thinking, oh my God, with the old people, please stop. We now have computers. I'm gonna take them, I'm gonna put it on my computer, and that's how I'm gonna journal. No, that is not journaling. That is note-taking. There's a huge, huge difference there. So Richard Branson, you guys know who Richard Branson is. He is the owner of Virgin Airlines, and, the man owns like 8 islands. So he's probably doing fairly well. He is also dyslexic, but he carries a notebook. And if you ever see him, a picture of him, a video of him, he has a notebook in his back pocket and he carries it all the time. So he says this about, I love this. If I can find it, hold on. I did write it down so that I could have it. Beep, beep, beep. There is a correlation, he says, which there is a core recognition of the gesture in the written word, a sort of recognition by mental simulation of your brain. It seems this circuit is contributing in unique ways that we did not realize. So I love that he writes everything down. The other one, as we know, is Oprah. So Oprah she started journaling when she was 13. When she, as you guys know, she went through some very trying times in her life, and she got away from journaling. And she said when she got back to it, it was to build her mental strength. And so now she writes in a journal. Her big thing is gratitude, and we're gonna go over that in a second. But she has that is what she journals. I'm sure she journals about other things, but her main thing is gratitude. Okay. This last slide, I will send it to you guys if you want, or a list of journal prompts that if you'd like to start journaling, I can definitely send it to you. It will give you some ideas to start. So Anne, if you want, I can take a screenshot of that and just send it. That might be more helpful than trying to write all that down. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing that. And then let me say this. For those of you who do not journal or have not journaled or don't make it a practice, it is a practice. It is something that you have to commit to every single day. It's like brushing your teeth for me. Like, it is just a part of my day. I do it not in a specific time. I carry it with me all the time. It's by my bed. When I get up, I leave it. I can be in my car and think of something and I write it down in my journal. I don't care where you write it. I don't care if it's on a piece of CVS receipt. I don't care if it's on a napkin, but write it down and keep it. I want to know, how many of you guys keep handwritten cards that people send you? Why? Why do you keep them? You're on mute.
I keep mine because every now and then I have like 3 boxes of them. And I guess when I have like really bad days or a bad birthday, I'll go back to my birthday box and then find like previous restaurants where like all the staff signed it if I was missing them because it's a different state, or one that my grandmother had sent now that she's passed away, or my dad, he's gone as well. So I go back and I can see those and it actually makes me happy. So I keep them for like future, I don't know, a future drug for happiness on, given days. I have a box for Christmas, which it's like an Amazon box now because I can't, over the years, I was doing it since I was like 12. So I even have the ones in my hope chest from before I turned 18 and went to college. So it just, it's so much fun to go back and look at them, and all even the little ones that, basically they just signed their names, but they just bought the card at, CVS, whatever. Just that card itself, it was funny or emotional, or it meant something to them, which means something to me now. So yeah, I'm a hoarder when it comes to that.
I love it. I love it. Anyone else? Yeah. I mean, I have cards from like whenever, and I think it's the same thing, Janice. It's to go back and look and say, oh my gosh, that's so fun. I remember that. Now, let me ask you this. What if those were your words? It's different. It's different when they're your words and where you were feeling and where you were in that time. So we are in a time right now that, right, I talk to my older clients in their 80s right now, and they're like, this is what one of them said to me yesterday. I actually have it in an email. She said, I have seen some shit in my life, but I have never seen anything like this. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hopefully we never will again. But what an amazing time to keep a journal.
true.
What if we could get our hands on something that somebody had written, and I'm sure they're out there, during World War II, during the Holocaust, during polio, during, like, I don't know about you, but I would devour those things. That is the legacy. That is the legacy to leave. As I mentioned before, I lost my dad. He was young. He was in his 50s when he passed away of cancer. And to be able to go back and look at cards that he wrote me, or a letter that he wrote me my freshman year in college when I went away to school for the first time, that's all I have left. So I don't know. Hopefully I'll live. I'm too mean to die now, so I'll probably live to like I'm 112. But to have somebody go back and read those things and say, this was my mom. This was my grandmother. This was my great grandmother. She was kind of cool, right? That is what I want you to leave. It does not have to be perfect. It does not have to, it can be angry, right? Drew and I talked about this. He was like, don't you feel like it should be positive and, really? And I'm like, no, it should be how you feel. If you feel sad, if you feel angry, if you feel happy, if you feel inspired, that should all go down on paper. All of it. Because when you type it in, it's not the same. I don't know about you, but my handwriting, if I'm writing something, you can tell if I'm happy or if I'm mad by the way I'm writing big or small, or I'm pressing down and it goes through 3 sheets of paper. You can tell when you're typing it, just as you send an email, right? I could be like, when I'm typing it, I'd be like, hey, somebody else could read that as, hey, you don't know. But when you write it down, there's something beautiful about that. And I will tell you, I shared this in my Ignite journaling class. Black Dog Renovations was born out of a journal entry. That's where it came from. I was writing one day and said, I love real estate, but I am a doer. And I like to do things with my hands. And I've been woodworking since I was 8 years old. So I like to do things. I like to build. I like to rip stuff down. I like to do all of that. What can I do is there something that I can do in my business that would fill a need for me, also fill a need for the community and my clients? Passing thought, wrote it down, went back into that journal to find something I was looking for. I think a book. I write down like book things that I want to read or something like that. And I'm like, where is that book? I go back and I was like, huh. So I talked to Erin about it and I said, hey, what do you think about X, Y, and Z? She was not with me at the time that I wrote that journal entry. And Black Dog was born shortly after. So I'm just going to encourage you to start writing. Once you really start to journal, you don't need a prompt, because it just starts to flow. It just starts to flow, and that is when it becomes. You write stuff down, and you're like, "Ooh, I don't know if I really want to leave that there for the world to see," but that's good stuff. Because when you write it down, sometimes it puts clarity on it. Like you write it down and go, huh, that actually is kind of dumb. I'm not really as upset about that as I thought I was. Or you can write it down and be like, yeah, that really pisses me off. And I'm going to keep journaling about it. How many of you guys will write an email sometimes and be like, I'm not going to send it, but man, I want to. Yeah?
All the time.
It's much safer to put it on paper. Get it out on paper so that you don't so that you can go back. Because sometimes for me, I've become a little bit more mature, not a ton, but a little bit, that I'll write something and be like, I'm going to send it. And then I'm like, I'm going to let it sit and I'll look at it tomorrow. Now I write it. And if I come back and I look at it and I'm like, gosh, that is really hurtful. And that's not what I wanted to say. And do I want to say it at all? But I've written it down now and I can see it. And there's something about getting it from here onto paper rather than on your computer. So it's not the same. Again, writing on your computer is taking notes.
Can I say something?
Yes.
So I have a friend. I did it for a while. I have forgotten. I did a lot of journaling. I have many different ones, but haven't done anything for years now. But I start again. So she starts every day with a question, which is great. Lord, she says, Lord, what is on your mind for me today? You have this big question. And then you let it flow. You can do the same with real estate, whatever, no? Do what is on your mind for me today. So this, I think, is very, very helpful, because then you get so many ideas, you're astonished that you had the ideas.
Yes.
So this question is, Lord, God, whatever, what is on your mind for me today? And then you let it flow. It's very good.
I love that.
Love
I
that.
love that. And that's what journaling does eventually. It starts to flow and you don't even think about it.
Yeah.
But you always think you're going to remember this moment.
Yeah.
I'll remember this forever. You don't remember it. We have too many moments. So
Candace, I know you're muted, but you were in the Ignite journal class and you picked journal up again because you weren't journaling before that.
I did. So
give us because how many months have you been journaling since you stopped and then you started?
Since January. Yeah. I haven't done it every day since I've been in my house every day, because not a whole lot of new things happen, but at least twice a week since that. But before that, I was doing it I'm not as good at doing it every day, but almost every day. I've always wanted to be a writer. Like, I was an English major, in undergrad, and I've always wanted to be a writer. I've got that perfectionistic kind of quality that I hesitate to put things down, but I've been doing it since January, a little bit more. My grandmother was a journaler too. My family owns a cabin property since the 1950s in the woods in Pennsylvania, and my grandmother, there's logs and logs of her journals, and they're just kind of like, oh, we saw a bear and two cubs out in the back, and so and so came to visit this weekend, and very like documenting everything. But there's stuff in there from when I was a baby, from when my mom was a kid. It's great. Yeah.
Oh, that's
I
so
love
cool.
that.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, it's such a, I don't know. It is just really something about it that takes your heart to a totally different level. And I love to write. Not a great writer, but I do love to write. But what I know, what journaling has done for me, it has given me a stronger sense of gratitude. I can write things down and say, as my grandmother did in one of her journals about my dad. When my dad passed away, she wrote, I feel like I'm being selfish as I have 3 more children, but a mother should never have to bury her own child. And when I read that, I thought, you got it. That's so true. But that was her on that paper. That is her soul on that paper. And like I said, I wouldn't give $1 million for that journal, for that green notebook with the orange sticker on it, right? I mean, I to know that that was her hurt, like that, I mean, it's just astounding to me. So I love that prompt, Misha. I love that. One that I use to tell people is what makes you mad, and what makes you cry, and what makes you laugh. Those are three that I love. Because you can really go to town. You can really kind of get started on those. And yeah, those are good ones. So if I know somebody said, yeah, please send the prompts, and I will do that. But yeah, that's just my, as you can tell, I'm very passionate about it. I love it. It allows me to get it out. And sometimes just work through it myself. There's just some things that are private, and I don't want to talk to anybody about it. And I want to talk to Jay about it. And I want to talk to my best friends about it. It's just something for me. And they can look at it when I'm dead. But for now, those are my private. So I love this. Oh shucks, I wish I could give proper credit to whoever said it, but they said, be a keeper of your time. Journaling is a keeper of your time, which I love. I love that.
Susan, what do you do with your journal? Like when you fill one up, do you have like a special place that you put them?
I have we have glassed bookshelves in our living room. And I'll take a picture later and show them to you. They're too just filled. They're just filled with journals. And
your family ever try to open them up and read them? And no, they wouldn't. They kind of know it's just sacred and it's like they're okay.
Yeah. There's another place in here. Oh, here. I don't know if you can see. Do you see that little piece of furniture? I know it's kind of dark, but right there's like a little rolling cart, and it's got a little latch on it. There's some in there as well, because I just have a problem and they start to overflow. But no, I mean, I feel like that they are very respectful of that. It's just kind of a precedent that I set, is that this is mine, and there's nothing in there. I guess they've really never asked. Sometimes I'll show them something in my journal that I wrote, maybe about them, or I was sharing a story with Grayson the other day about when he was little, and I said, hold on, let me see if I can find it. Not, I put dates on them so that I don't have to go back through every single one, but so I showed him a story that I wrote about him when he was like 18 months old, and he was laughing, and we kind of talked about journaling a little bit, but no, they really haven't been gone through, to my knowledge.
Susan, can I ask you a question about earlier you said, I thought it was a great point, the difference between taking notes and journaling. And if you're at a CVS or something and you have a thought, you write it down, is that a note? I mean, how does that fit in with the whole journaling?
So I feel like if it's something that's on your mind that you're like, that's awesome, then you should write it down. And that's kind of my thing. It can be a note, right? I mean, it can be a note or just a thought, but if it's important enough for you to be like, that's good stuff, and you write it down, then that is part of a journal to me. I think some people get caught up, Janet, in being like, oh, I've got to sit down and journal. I can open my journal and have it open for 20 seconds and write a note. I'm still journaling. I'm still writing it down. I think note taking is more, is not as freeing as journaling. Note taking to me is, oh, I've got to go to the grocery store and I've got to, get milk. And, it's more of a to-do list to me. And a lot of people keep to-do list in their journal. I don't, it's your journal. You can do whatever you like. But for me, it's more of a, and believe me, if when I die and people go back and look at these, they're going to be like, she was a little bit schizophrenic, because I have a thought here and then a thought there. But that's where it all comes together, right? That I can look at it and be like, well, that was random. But for me at the time, it made sense to write it down. Right? What did Deanna say?
I know. Deanna, you can unmute, can't you? Tell us.
So, I don't know if you want to hear this. When I was 24, I hitchhiked around the world for 10 months, and I have the book still. Did journaling. And I was thinking I should write a book. And then when I lost my German husband, I always journal when I'm in a stress situation. So when I lost my German husband through cancer, 1.5 years, I had a book on the left side, everything with our best business and everything with his illness. I have all these books. And I did for 1 year dream interpretation in England when I was 25 or something. 1 year, I wrote every night all dreams down and got the answers. So I have done this for years, and then I forget. So I'm inspired now. I will start again.
I love that. I love that. Deanna, what were you gonna?
What I was writing is, like you, Susan, I've always been a journaler of different types. I started when I was about 6 with that green book with the lock that you get for your birthday when you're a little girl.
Yeah.
I have no idea where that one is, but and I've written different things, different times. But freshman year of college, I kept a journal specifically for my sister and gave it to her. I have no idea if she still has it, and it would probably be humiliating to read all that stuff now, but I thought it was important for her to know my experience as a college freshman. I've kept a journal for all 3 pregnancies, and those were the type that you go buy in the store that's like my pregnancy journal, or whatever. And my oldest child is 26, so I was pregnant at a time that you didn't have those, people didn't take the belly pictures as much, or I don't have all the pictures, but I have all the writing. I'm terrible about organizing the baby books. I still have all the pictures from all the kids all over the place in a billion bins. But I have a lot of things written, like you're talking about, Susan, which has been helpful. And I did find that I wrote specifically during very stressful times. So I was upset picking up something and looking, and it makes it seem as if I'm always angry at my husband, or, that it was like bad stuff. So at another point, I decided to only write positive things. And I'm like you now, I think that maybe that's not the right take on it. Anyway, mine are now a big fat mess. I have no idea if anybody would be interested ever when I die, because it is all mixed up with to-do list and thoughts and so forth. But I do get clarity from it, and I do find that like you said, it's a great way to work through some emotions and some stuff. And for me personally, even like taking notes, I'm taking in a journal that I have it says education, coaching, business items. And I started this one during COVID because we keep doing these Zoom meetings. So I had to have a place to put all that stuff. But maybe somebody in the future will like to see my handwriting. Who knows?
I love it. I love it. Yeah. I mean, I think it's great. And I think it let me say this, it can be whatever you want it to be. If it's all happy, fine. If it's all pissed off, fine. I mean, I think it should be whatever you want it to be. For me, mine is a bunch of different things. And I too kept, kept, I didn't keep one for Abby because just didn't, but I did keep one for Grayson because that was the point of my, and we had a miscarriage in between the two of them. And so that was, that's journaled and documented, and we never shared that with them. Just because they don't need to know, it's just, maybe I'll share it with Abby one day, but it's just not that, but somebody will see it one day. And, it's just, and I know it is difficult to get started, but once you get started, it is a practice that you will come to enjoy and look forward to, because that is your time that you are giving yourself. And, but you're also giving it to someone else who comes along after you. So, I wanted to, whoever was on the call today, I am going to do two things. Number one, I am going to make a journal for each of you and leave it at the office. So when you go, I'll just put them in envelopes and put them in your boxes. But I've made a couple of them for some friends, and it's just called the 2020 Vision Journal. Play on words, obviously. But I think I would really like for you to start during this time, because our vision of 2020 is probably very different than what it started out to be. And, but also, it does give you clarity. It gives you 2020 vision when you start to write and you start to get it on paper. So, and if you don't mind just shooting me a note with everybody that's on the call, so I don't have to remember it, because I won't remember it, but I would like to do that for you guys.
Picture.
Oh, perfect. And then the other thing that I would like to do for you guys is, and I've shared this with some of you, is that I am writing a course on journaling. I have been asked to do that, and I have felt called to do it. And so, John Maxwell is actually mentoring me on this, which I am thrilled and humbled with how that happened and how it all came about. But to have a call with John Maxwell is like bananas. And he is a big journaler as well. And so he's like, I think people need this. I think you're the one to do it. So, yeah, it's pretty awesome. So, I was going to offer that course to you guys as my guinea pigs, if you would like to be part of it. It's going to, of course, it's going to be a paid course. People are going to have to pay to take it, but I wanted to offer it to you guys, again, as a free course, if you would like to take it, and on how to get started and that sort of thing. So, yeah, just let me know. Linda, do you have a question, honey? Did I miss it?
I just posted in there. I'm curious how much you write daily on an average. I mean, is it a 10-minute thing in the morning? Is it a 30-minute thing in the morning? Is it, does it just really vary?
Yeah, it varies. It varies. Lately, I can write up to an hour a day. Mm-hmm. Some days I get in 3 minutes, right? I some days I'm just tired, and I get to the end of the day and I don't have, for whatever reason, I just don't have a lot that I want to put on paper, or I don't get to it, but it just varies. I mean, I just make it part of my day, but I don't schedule it. Does that make sense? It's just something that it's brushing your teeth for me. I mean, or it's just time that I make for myself. And so it could vary.
Might even be something that we have to schedule to get started for those.
I would recommend it. Yeah. for sure. That's in my course. I highly recommend it. It's definitely something you should put in there to get started. Yeah. Anybody else?
Awesome.
I'm not reading these messages. Is anybody catching up with these?
I have
Yeah.
a question.
Go for
Yeah,
it.
Maggie.
Sorry. I was just curious. So I have dabbled with journaling since I was like 4 or 5. I mean, legitimately, that was really important to my mom growing up, but I go through years where I don't do it. And of course I did it a little bit when I was pregnant, when I had time. And then I go, I have a month where I did it to talk about chef's 8 months or 6 months, and I go back and I read it and I cry, or I show it to Brady and say like, look, this was our goal at the beginning of 2018. And it said, I wanted to get pregnant and that I wanted to, it had all these goals and now we're living them. And it's really cool. And some of it's like, we wanted to save $20,000 and that's comical. So anyway, there's a lot of just funny things to go back. It's more goals that I like to look back, and Brady likes to look back at them, but he's never done it. So it's awesome. But what my issue is I struggle to do it every day. I did the Miracle Morning years ago, and that was great. For that time, I journaled every day because that was part of the Miracle Morning. And then it felt like if I didn't do one thing, that I shouldn't do any of it. And so I have, like I said, once a month where I'll do it. But how do you say you journal every day? And if you don't set a time, how do you find the time? If you're about to go to bed and you haven't journaled, do you run and grab your journal and take some quick notes? Or what do you, it just happens because you're
because I don't want it to feel like a chore. So I feel like if I were to say, oh gosh, I haven't journaled today, then I feel guilty about it. And I want it to, and it's a pleasure for me, not a task. So it's just something instinctively now that I do. But let me say that the practice is not easy to get started. It's kind of like if I can put it in these is just an awful analogy, but it's kind of like when you get like a new something, like for me, like the Peloton, right? We just got a Peloton. And so the first 15 days we had it, I was on that thing and I was riding and I was high-fiving people and now it's kind of lost its luster a little bit because it's getting hot in there and I don't wanna, and so
Killing me.
so I don't want it to be like that. I want it to be something, you guys know too, I'm a huge reader, so I don't watch TV. So that is for me, another time too, I just set aside for myself. So it's kind of the same thing. But there are days that I'm like, I want to rip somebody's head off and I just grab my journal and talk about that. I want to rip their head off and why. And there are times that I'm hurt and I'm sad, and instead of keeping that inside, I put it on paper. So it has just become and I keep it close by, right? I keep it close by so that if I want to write, that it's with me. I also have one in my car. It's a smaller one, but I keep it in there for stuff. I do some of my best thinking in the car. So if I'm in between appointments or if I pull into a parking spot, I can just be like, oh, I want to remember this thought that I have.
So you don't use one journal. You have maybe a couple spread out in your house.
I have a couple. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Again, I don't care where you write it, just write it. Right. So, one of my journals, it's not in here. One of my journals has random, not kidding you, CVS receipt. There's a napkin in there, but I still wanted it in there. So it's just shoved in there and it's fine. Right. It's mine. So I'm not worried about it.
Do you see not to be technical, but the quality of the journal? You just mentioned obviously the green spiral notebook. Is there companies that do better? I don't know. I like a certain pen, so I'm sure I'm going to like a certain journal because I'm weird like that. Is there some that you like more than others? You just go on Amazon and order something cute? What?
So I like Moleskin. I've been using those for a while. Okay. I actually like the ones from Michaels. Those are kind of nice.
Thank
Yeah,
you for those.
I gave you guys those. I also, full disclosure, am prototyping my own. So
Wow.
that's something you guys might want to invest in. I don't know. But yeah, those will be really cool as well. Those are kind of a when I was talking to John, and we were just had a call yesterday, and we were talking about the paper and how I wanted it to feel, and he was like, how do you want people to feel when they open this? Do you want them to think Susan Morris, or do you just want it to be a book? And I said, no, I want people to be like, this reminds me of Susan. And he said, you know, at a point, people are going to buy them and not know who you are. And I said, I know, but for now, this is what I want it to be. And it can evolve, but it's a very rustic paper. It's very rough around the edges, kind of like me. And like, it just reflects kind of who I am. So, but I don't really have one in particular, you know.
I know I've looked at some of my writings like from a year ago in a training, and some of my ink fades, right? So I'm like, well, that's weird. Like maybe it's because it was a cheap pen or the paper was not great. So I'm just curious, like 3 years from now, I wrote this, which I did not, I don't journal. I will going forward. So I wrote 4 years ago, and then I opened the thing up, and it's like, I know that happens just in my notebooks of things. So there's even some, I hate to be technical, but pens and the type of paper, you know.
So I will tell you, and I'll send them to you, my favorite pen and my favorite paper. They are not cheap, but they made me, when I first got started, they made me want to write. And I think that's, you know, it's kind of like going to the gym, right? If you have to go in like your yard shoes, you don't really want to go, right? But if you have like an amazing new pair of kicks, you're like, I'm going to go show these off with my new Lululemon pants, right? So, I mean, I think it's that kind of thing. This paper is made of stone. That's how
I think you told me about that.
Oh, it's so good. Like, it's so smooth.
It's like rubbery looking. I think you should let me feel it.
I remember that paper. You had that notebook a couple years ago of that.
Maybe that's what it was.
Yes, you wrote in it, Maggie.
Yeah,
I still have
that
it.
pin. Yeah.
You wrote, this is awesome. I still have it. But that's it. That's the paper and the pen. So I'll put that. I'll send that to you.
I know I'm very technical, but that little stuff makes sense.
No, it's okay. I mean, whatever gets you there. It's like oh, there's Shelly. It's like Shelly's like, you know, fuck this shit. I'm gonna get it on paper. Whatever. I'm like, amazing. Like whatever works. Whatever works. Get it on paper. It's amazing.
I agree.
So yeah.
Oh yeah, that's it. The shit show.
Oh, there you go.
That was awesome.
A lot of the journals that give you like an outline for the day. I mean, it's like things I want to accomplish, or things that make me happy, or things that make me sad, or things, you know what I'm saying? Those
Some
kind
of
of
them do, yeah.
Yeah. So journal prompts. Yeah. I mean,
Shelley has, that's what yours says.
Yeah. And I think those, if that works for you, that is awesome. Go for it. I find that I get paralyzed by it because I'm a little bit of a maverick, a little bit of a free spirit. So I don't want somebody to tell me what I should be writing. Again, that's just me. I mean, y'all aren't surprised.
I tried those and they didn't really work for me. So it was, just kind of curious, because it's sort of like, my thoughts today aren't really on what are my goals for the day, or my thoughts, I mean, there's a lot of life that happens, especially now with the COVID-19, I don't wake up going, okay, I'm going to conquer the world today. It's more like, I'm just going to survive.
Take a shower.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're getting started, here's what I would start with always is just gratitude. Mm-hmm. And you know what? There are days that you wake up and you feel like, I don't have a piece of gratitude today. Get primary about it, right? Get primary. At least be thankful for clean water and a toothbrush. Like, I don't care what it
here we can say we've got a house, we have internet, we have lights.
Yeah.
I mean, you cannot, and y'all have heard me say this 1,000 times, you cannot live in gratitude and any other emotion at the same time. It's not neurologically feasible to do. So if you are in gratitude, that's where you are. Gratitude trumps fear every single time. So start with gratitude. And listen, I remember going back one of my journal entries, we had lost power and I had to clean everything out of my fridge. And I was like, I have never given gratitude for my fridge before, but I am today, because I threw out probably $1,000 worth of food between my fridge and my freezer. And it's just something I don't think about, right? How many times do you go to your fridge a day and open it up and grab something out of there? You don't think about it. But, if you're digging deep, the fridge is a good place to start. And the pantry. Give gratitude for my pantry. So, yeah.
Well, awesome. Any last thoughts? Any last questions? Susan, we want that class for sure. I think we all can agree. And I want that paper and pen, because I'm weird about that stuff. So I need to have that.
So somebody wrote, so somebody said, I saw something about John Maxwell pop up. Who was that?
We have so many things of gratitude in this chat box. Please journal prompts, handwriting. Deanna shared hers. Holy moly, Deanna. John Maxwell.
Yeah, Deanna. So really, I'm a John Maxwell certified coach, right? But a year ago, right around this time, Paul Martinelli is John Maxwell's right-hand man. He is the president of the John Maxwell team. I did a private vision retreat with him for 2 days at his house on Jupiter Island. And it was expensive. And I thought, you know what, though? I am going to invest this in myself. There's no one else I'm going to bet on but me. And I got there on a Friday afternoon, and we were going to go to dinner that night. And he said, hey, do you mind if somebody joins us for dinner? And I'm like, no, I don't mind at all. Secretly, I just paid X amount for this, and now I've got to share my time with you. This is really freaking awesome. We get to dinner, we walk in, and John is sitting at the table. And I'm like, wow. Susan, you're an ass.
Yeah.
Right? Now, of course, I had met him on different occasions, and we went to Paraguay and all that cool stuff. But he doesn't know, he didn't know who I was. We sit down at the table, and I turn into an idiot. I can't form a word. I can't form a sentence. Stuff that's coming out of my mouth is stupid and loud. And I'm just it was awful. And amazing at the same time. Well, from then on, we just had a connection, and he gave me his cell number, and he said, listen, I want you to know anytime you need to run something past me, or I can mentor you in any way, you let me know. And I said, is this for real? Am I going to be bugging you? And he said, no, if you need my help. So in September of last year, I shot him a text and said, hey, it's Susan. I'm really, I went to Paul to work on this journaling thing. That's why I went to kind of get clarity on that. And so I have both of them helping me right now. But to have a call with John Maxwell, to me, is like the heavens open up, right? I send everyone out of the house so there's no dog barking or no children breathing or anything. And it's amazing. So I know that this is a calling for me. And I know that that if I can help just one person, that all the money that I've spent and all the time that I've spent is well worth it. So yes, I am so incredibly fortunate and giddy, right? I mean, when you see John Maxwell show up on your phone, you're like, I think I'm going to throw up, right? So for me, it's just really cool. Yeah. So
that's awesome. Well deserved, though.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So if you guys have any other questions, let me know. Thank you, Anne, for inviting me, and I appreciate it so much. Thank you.